Hi everyone, my name is Shamit Sawant and I'll be taking the topic inverse kinematics. So what is inverse kinematics? हम लोग ने forward kinematics अभी देखा. Forward kinematics, in forward kinematics we had the theta, the joint angles, and we wanted to find the xyz, the end effector coordinates. So as the name suggests, inverse kinematics is the exact opposite of it. In inverse kinematics we have the xyz coordinates and we want the joint angles. So basically we have the goal position and we want to find the joint angles for the robotic arm. Now a lot of you guys might think that if we have forward kinematics to solve, then why do we need inverse kinematics? So उसका एक बहुत basic answer है that as humans we understand length better than angle. As humans हम लोग को length perception ज़्यादा अच्छा होता है rather than angle perception. The second thing is that trajectory planning becomes easier in case of inverse kinematics. Trajectory planning बहुत important होती है, वो आगे समझेगा, और and that is a bit easier to do in inverse kinematics compared to forward kinematics. Now this diagram, forward kinematics we have thetas, we want the xyz coordinate. In inverse kinematics it is the exact opposite. We have the position P, that is we have the xyz and we want to find the theta 1 and theta 2. Now next, where is inverse kinematics used? It is almost used everywhere. Wherever you hear the term kinematics, then it's most probable that it is inverse kinematics that you are going to use. Forward kinematics काफ़ी rare है, मतलब rarely use होता है. From industrial manipulators to quadrupeds and robotic arms to artificial manipulators, everywhere mostly inverse kinematics ही use होता है. Two of the Eklavya groups, I guess one of them has done this project of industrial manipulator and one group has done this as well, quadruped. So I hope कि you guys have used inverse kinematics in solving for the manipulator. Now moving ahead, now this is very important. If you read something about inverse kinematics or if you read about kinematics in general, you will hear this statement, you will read this statement that inverse kinematics is difficult compared to forward kinematics. Now why is that so? First and foremost reason, forward kinematics has a closed form solution whereas inverse kinematic does not. So closed form solution, what does closed form solution mean? Closed form solution is basically having an algorithm to solve the problem. I hope you guys remember कि forward kinematics के टाइम हम लोग ने DH algorithm करके कुछ यूज़ किया था. अभी सॉल्व करते वक्त हम लोग ने DH algorithm यूज़ किया था. Inverse kinematics में we are not going to have any kind of algorithm. It is going to be completely based on trigonometry and some mathematical tools. So that is one reason why IK is considered difficult. Now the second reason is that we don't have a proper solution for inverse kinematics. Proper solution in the sense we won't always have a unique solution to the xyz that we put in. That is any given position के लिए, कोई भी xyz के लिए we might have one solution, we might have many solutions, we might even have no solution for that. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The next thing is that in robots with less than 3 degrees of freedom, a lot of area is unrealized. Unrealized in the sense कि the end effector cannot reach a lot of places. Basically, a lot of places are missed out by the robot. Even with robots having less than 6 DOF, that is almost 5 के आसपास पकड़ लो. Even 5 DOF robots are like a lot of points are missed in 5 DOF robots as well. Here is an example you can see in this robot. This robot can only go to areas with the shaded part. It cannot reach this part, it cannot reach this part as well. This part is just outside its range. You can see that this part was its vicinity, this part is its vicinity, but still this robot cannot reach this part. So even if that point is quite close to that robot, it still cannot reach that point. So that is one thing to note as well, that In inverse kinematics, it is not that you'll always get a solution. You have to think about that as well. The existence of solution is very important, whether that solution exists or not. Moving forward, we'll see some basic linear algebra. Linear algebra बहुत easy है, मतलब किया होगा सब लोग ने, आई होप पहले ही. एन इंडिपेंडेंट इक्वेशंस है तो we get a unique solution for it. If we have dependent equations, that is, if you see carefully, the second equation is just the multiple of the first equation. If you multiply the first equation with 2, you'll get the second equation. Or you can even say that the second equation is just a scaled version of the first equation. In these types of cases, you get infinite number of solutions. In the next case, we have n independent equations with n unknowns, but these equations are a bit special because they follow a condition wherein a1 by a2 is equal to b1 by b2 but is not equal to c1 by c2. Now a1 by a2 is the coefficient of x. A1 is the coefficient of x, 4 is the coefficient of x as well in the second equation. So basically, if they follow this condition, we get no solution. Now it will be better if you understand with this diagram. You can see that the first diagram represents these two equations, not these two equations, these types of equations wherein they represent two lines which intersect at a point, and this point is the solution. Similarly, for the second part, it is just the scaled version of the first equation. So basically it is the same line, so we have infinite solution. In the third case, these two equations represent two separate parallel lines which will never intersect and will give us no solutions. Moving on, the solutions of inverse kinematics. To solve inverse kinematics, we are going to use the transformation matrix which we derived earlier in the forward kinematics part. The matrix looked something like this, wherein we had p1, p2, p3. These were the points. Basically p1 actual में x है, p2 actual में y है, p3 is z, where x, y and z are the coordinates of the end effector. Similarly, this r part is the rotational part. We will talk about this in the next slide. So since the last row of the R matrix is always constant, we can see that the last row is constant. We get 12 non-linear algebraic equations. Now this is important. 12 non-linear algebraic equations. Where can I find 12 non-linear algebraic equations? So first equation is over here. P1 is equal to some expression. Second equation is here. P2 is equal to some expression. P3 is equal to some expression. So we have 3 over here, 3 over here, 3 over here. So in that sense, we have 12 non-linear algebraic equations over here in this matrix. Now the thing to note here is that these 12 equations are not independent to each other. You need to be careful about this. These 12 equations are not independent of each other. We'll talk about this in the next slide on how the dependencies are there for these 12 equations, but you need to remember that these 12 equations are not independent to each other. We'll see the P1, P2, P3 solution. Before that, I hope you guys know about this roll, pitch, yaw thing. That roll is basically the rotation about this axis, yaw is basically rotation about this axis, and pitch is rotation about this axis, that is axis of its wings. So we'll move to the next slide. Some examples of equations. We are taking the examples of P1, P2, P3. As I told you, P1 is x, so in place of P1 we can put x. X is equal to this expression, y is equal to this expression, and z is equal to this expression. Similarly, we have expressions for individual terms in this matrix. Now the constraints on the tool configuration. This is the part wherein we'll discuss about the constraints and why those 12 equations were not independent of each other. So if you saw the earlier photo of the aeroplane, you could see that the roll, pitch and yaw were basically three axes. They were rotating on three axes, and those were perpendicular to each other. In mathematical way, we say that perpendicular is actually, we call them as orthogonal vectors. So basically those three vectors were orthogonal to each other. Now there is a term here, orthonormal. Now what does orthonormal means? Orthonormal is nothing but the same as orthogonal, but the only thing is that those vectors need to have unit magnitude. So anything that is perpendicular, any vector or any frames that are perpendicular to each other and have a unit vector or a unit magnitude of frame or unit magnitude of vector, then those frames or those vectors are termed as orthonormal frames. So this word is very important, orthonormal. So those three vectors or those three frames were actually orthonormal. So this condition gives us six equations, I'll say. So the r1 dot r2 is equal to 0. Now where does this come from? Now we talked about orthonormal, that is they are perpendicular and have a magnitude of 1. So since they are perpendicular, the dot product is equal to 0. r1 dot r2 is actually r1 times r2 times cos of 90. Cos 90 is 0, therefore we get these three equations. Similarly, the second part of orthonormal, that is the magnitude should be 1, gives us another three constraints. That is r1's magnitude is 1, r2's magnitude is 1 and r3's magnitude is 1. So all in all, we have 6 constraints. So out of the 12 constraints implicit in the arm equation, actually only 6 are independent constraints on the n unknown components of vectors of joint variable q. So one more thing to note here is we have n unknowns. Earlier when we were solving for the forward kinematics, we only had 3 unknowns, that is x, y and z. Or you can even say if you were solving for the rotational part as well, then you have 6 unknowns. But in case of inverse kinematics, you do not know how many joint angles there are going to be. You only have x, y, z, the position vector of the end effector. So that is the reason we have an unknown components of the vector of joint variables q. So this is the vector, normal vector, this is the approach vector, and this is the sliding vector. This is the end effector basically. So you can see that these are perpendicular to each other and we consider them as the bases. So bases are mostly taken as having magnitude 1. Now talking about the uniqueness of solution. Now earlier हम लोग ने बात किया existence of solution के बारे में, that in inverse kinematics you will not have a solution always. हमेशा solution मिलने की कोई guarantee नहीं है. Similarly एक unique solution मिलने की भी कोई guarantee नहीं है. There are cases where we get multiple solutions. So that is also an issue, that existence of solution is not only a problem, we also have a problem with getting many solutions. So when we get many solutions, we call it as redundancy. And one thing to note is that with increasing degrees of freedom, जितना complex वो robot होगा उतने ज़्यादा redundancy होगी, उतने ज़्यादा multiple solutions मिलेंगे हम लोग को. So this is a diagram for it. Redundancy, the same position, the same problem has 2 solutions here, 2 configuration. Similarly, you can see for this robot, we have for the same target position or same goal position, we have 3 orientations. So this is also a problem for us, that uniqueness of solution. We have to think about uniqueness of solution as well as the existence of solution in case of inverse kinematics. But this uniqueness of solution is not not only a problem, but it is actually sometimes helpful to us as well. So the usefulness of redundancy or the usefulness of having multiple degrees of freedom is that it adds adds flexibility to the manipulator. Now flexibility in the sense that the arm is not going to be like not going to be soft or anything. The word flexibility means that we are going to be able to reach positions, or we are going to be able to reach inaccessible positions, wherein if we did not have this redundancy, we would not be able to reach that position. Now we can see this in this example. This position would not have been realizable if this redundant elbow was not present in this robotic arm. If we did not have this redundant arm, we would not have been able to reach this point. So this is the usefulness of redundancy. Now talking about the flowchart, I hope we have done this many times. Forward kinematics, we go from joints to the XYZ part. If you consider the rotation part, then roll pitch yaw part. So in forward kinematics, we have the theta and we get the position and the orientation vector of our end effector. In case of inverse kinematics, we have this XYZ and we have to get the joint angles. Moving ahead, tool configuration. Now as we said, we have two vectors, like the P vector and the R matrix. So the P vector or the P gave us the position of the end effector, whereas R gave us the rotational part of the end effector. So these both these vectors can be represented with a single vector, that is W. Currently we are only going to talk about, or we are going to derive for P, so we'll only focus on P, but this is just for your knowledge that we can represent this as a single vector W. Next we have A tan 2 function. A tan 2 function is basically the 4-quadrant representation of arctan function with a range of -5 to pi. We are going to use this function in our code, so this function will be explained in the inverse kinematics code will be explained to you guys. So this will come again. This is the table for the function. Now we are done with all the textual or the textbook type concepts of inverse kinematics. We know why is it used, we know its advantages, we know its disadvantages, and we know the points where we have to be careful about the existence of solution, the uniqueness and all. So now what we'll do is we'll take the equations from the transformation matrix, the XYZ position, and we'll try to find out the theta angles, the joint angles using the XYZ, which we have derived using the forward kinematics. So that's all. Thank you.